Welcome back. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here on Morning Prime. And this is what you're waking up to inside the editorial pages of The Standard and The Daily Nation. What will Uhuru do? A probing question. And this is all regarding also the GMO with the court orders right now. We've heard that the court has stopped the importation of GMO. Court stops GMO as Linturi disowns courier. Why is the government also woefully disjointed as far as this matter is concerned? We've had the input of the head of public service. This is Mr. Felix Koske, that now the importation continues full steam ahead, protesting or disregarding what the protest from the farmers have put forward with their concerns. What will Uhuru do? And this is all about the court orders and how Uhuru has been violating court orders, moving full steam ahead with his agenda, regardless of some of the injunctions that were put forward by the courts. This is in the Daily Nation. And how are we prepared when it comes to disaster management? And you can see this is a dilapidated fire engine there. That is what Gado is trying to proffer for us to try and mull over regarding disaster management in the country. Lately, the floods are here. How are we prepared? We have also building crumbling down. We're always waiting for the other shoe to drop as far as preparedness is concerned with disaster management. And this is what has been aptly captured by Gado as well. By the way, Gladys, there has been always that disaster management bill that has been lingering in the National Assembly for the longest time as well. Just would like to note, I know, can that be also given the full effect it should, or it dies with every, of course, parliament that comes through? This is in the Standard today. And as well, looking at the People Daily, Beba Wengi, there is more space inside. I thought a friend in need is a friend indeed. This is a plight now of Raila Odinga and his Azimio coalition. As you can see it here, the Western coach is boarding many, and we can see there who has been depicted as the former governor of Kakamega boarding also the Western coach, being steered by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, and also the Speaker of the National Assembly, who now are wooing some of the legislators from the Western region. Is now this a resumption of Musalia Mudavadi as a kingpin of the Western region as well? That's a good question that we should be asking as well. And what does it portend for Raila Odinga right now that he's also trying to mass his house together to form a formidable team in terms of having also a formidable opposition on the other end to keep the government in check? And there is good news for the football fraternity in the Kenya right now. And you can see the ball and chain has been broken right now. And this is a happy moment for everyone, especially right now that every country is putting their eyes glued on the World Cup. And the developments there, FIFA has providentially now lifted the ban for the country. Will we see a resumption and, of course, restoring of the football in this country? It has been fractured, really. It has been also in dire states, but we are yet to see what will happen on that particular front as well. But back to a discussion before we delve deeper into the GMO and the debate. There's so many issues that we need to discuss. We had Dr. Nyikal, you wanted to say something regarding the boy child. So let's not really take much time on it because we're really strapped for time as well.
I'll be very brief. I noted that in the year 2007, 2008, that there was so much emphasis on the girl child, and therefore the boy child was neglected. And I felt at that time, and it's coming true, that there'll be a balance, because eventually the basis of a society is a family, and the family will come from boys and girls. Now, if you eventually go to a level where their experience in life are different, their responsibility, their sense of responsibility is their difference, their level of ambitions are different, their perspective of their self-importance in life are different. Because all these things have been improved in girls tremendously and not in boys. The result is what many of us feared, that the boys will lapse into drugs more, and that definitely marriages will not work, because you have an extremely empowered girl and you have no equally empowered boy. So I used to say at that time, when you're preparing strong girls, also prepare strong boys. because then you will have a family that is balanced. And so what we actually need to do is just go back and look at how we balance it out without making the girls feel like now they're being neglected. And then remember that also the roles have changed. The traditional role of the male has literally disappeared, because the male was supposed to be a breadwinner and probably a protector. Now, really, that role of breadwinning has gone to both. So the women are doing a lot of it. In terms of protection, you now don't need physical strength to be secure. There are systems in place, security systems and so on, who take care of that. And the household chores were known to be for women. But now if a woman is also working, then they go to the house in the evening and somebody is not working or has been working but comes back and put their foot on the chair. They are probably executives and they are going to prepare for, say, tomorrow's meeting. So those are issues that need to be taken into when we are raising children.
Thank you.
But definitely we need to focus on the boy child without excluding or neglecting the girl child.
Well, Gladys, you were talking about the late bloomers, and you know, there's such a discernible difference between the girls and the boys, but we tend to raise them on the same plane, because I think also, just generally, scientifically, the way the man is wired or the boy is wired and the girl is wired, the girls tend to be, you know, quick off the mark, to come out strongly in terms of personality, even communication skills as well. I mean, women are very good communicators, better than men. And I think that is just basically the way they've been wired, looking at their brains as well. But should our parents also maybe, I know today we're speaking more on the parenting side than also on the issue of politics, but I find it to be very fascinating that also you have this input. Are we exerting so much pressure on the boys? And this is how they wire. They're slow off the mark. They will speak later, you know, than the girls. They will walk later than the girls. They will actually
even physical growth.
Even physical growth. It's for them, it's a bit stunted, and for the girls, you find it's just a burst of growth. They're fully blooming earlier.
I think, as Dr. Nyikal is saying, is that we need to re-engineer our way of working and to refocus on the boy child without leaving the girl child. I'm happy to know that, and to know that Her Excellency, the Second Lady, Dr. Gachagua, has actually decided to take up the mantle of the boy child. I think that will elevate it to a conversation that can pass to the entire country. And I think it's very important. It's about time, and I was glad to see that she has done that. The challenge is the socialization. Like Dr. Nyikal said, there was a traditional role. Like if you look at a pastoralist community, such as mine, what did the men used to do? They used to herd the cattle. They used to go for cattle raids. They'd come fill up the boma. They would ensure that, and then the women would, you know, milk the cows, cook and fetch the firewood and so on. The men would protect the boma and so on. And the boys at a certain age, they went off again and went through a year of learning, and then thereafter became the warriors of the clan to look after. So there was very clear set roles traditionally. Then, of course, with the onset of modern life, that changed. But we never quite found the role for young men. So that the work that is left is the work around home, the homesteads. But that is not considered traditionally to be the role of the boys. So people think the boy shouldn't be cooking. They think the boy shouldn't be fetching firewood. The boy shouldn't be milking the cows. The boy shouldn't be feeding the chickens, you know, which are the daily chores that keep someone busy. And remember, in life, people don't even need money. People need to feel that I'm a useful member of society.
Indeed.
And you find that even when I was out of formal employment for some time, I was busy. The whole day I was on my feet in my house. I was cooking. I discovered baking bread. Then I realized some things needed repair. Then I was, I realized that I needed to redo the garden. So there were things that I would do. I was participating in the dairy. So I find that as a woman in my socialization is I find work to do. So I'm constantly a useful person in society. And like the example I gave is that we do everything with our daughters. If I'm cooking with my daughter. If I'm cleaning the house, I'm doing it with her. I'm sure if Dr. Yikal will tell you, if he's sitting with his son, they'll probably be sitting and watching football, isn't it? At most, yes. I rarely do. So the re-socialization has to be done.
Indeed.
And we've got to find things for the boy child to do. And that's why the issue of when CBC came, I thought CBC would actually teach us how to repair a bicycle, service a motor vehicle at home, fix something, do the bit of plumbing around the house like people do in Europe because they can't hire foodies. But here you find that even those basic skills, you may have a boy in the house, but they can't do it. They can't even cut a piece of wood and repair the ceiling.
Indeed.
So we've got to, there are many things they can do to make themselves useful. So they stop hanging out in the shopping center. And idleness is the workshop of the devil, as the Bible says.
Indeed.
So that is how the whole trouble comes. So we've got to re-gear ourselves that we can do certain things. We must begin to show there's nothing wrong with our boys, our African boys, getting involved in household chores. Because that's the problem. We've left them with nothing to do because we've told them you can't do this. So that has to change.
That has to change.
That has to change. Because I said it is, I know that once a nephew of mine said to me, oh, I don't know how to cook. So I said, oh, fine, just don't eat. Because how do you expect to eat and you don't know how to cook? How do you expect to eat when you don't know how to grow food? How do you expect to wear ironed clothes and you tell me you don't know how to iron? Right. Then wear creased clothes. Yeah.
You know what? Even as we're winding up, Isaac, I just want to give an example. I went to, there's some shops also where they sell these threads for knitting and all. And we just having this conversation with this guy on how he came up with that, because I found it to be a very novel business to do. People don't knit or, crocheting and all. So I asked him he told me one time that, even the women of today, they do not know how to just, sew back the buttons. Replace a button.
Yes.
And so there was this lady who walked up to her shop to bring the shirts of her husband, so many of them. She had to fork out 14,000 shillings just to replace, shirt buttons. Yes. And I said, and she was wondering, what is happening to our society? That even just replacing your button, all that particular button, she can't do it. She has to take it there.
And those you don't learn from school, you're supposed to learn from home. Yeah. I learned how to knit, I learned how to sew, I even learned to use the sewing machine, the one that you step with your foot. At home, my mother taught me.
Cooking.
Yeah, cooking. It's a life skill. If you can't cook, then you should starve to death.
Yes.
I think a lot has changed. I was just looking around how people dress. Sorry, I must say women. They no longer dress the way our mothers used to dress at certain stages. People who are our age are dressing like teenagers. They don't want to grow old. They are not gracefully, taking up what would have been traditionally how they are supposed to look at a certain point. So I don't know whether I want to call it a dysfunctional society, but I'm shocked, Debal, at how we are becoming westernized. Now, for men who are raising kids at my age now, there are things you wouldn't want to be seen before to do because it was not manly, like holding a baby. In my culture, even a man holding a baby like that, you are being sat on by your wife and this kind of things. But now there is nothing to do beyond the usual, and there is no regimented army of the community that is being prepared through these young people. NYS, I think, used to inculcate that kind of behavior, but or military energy, but it's not for all sexes, both male and female. So we do, and then men I don't know, because of that culture, men are not supposed to be with children. Children are supposed to be with their mothers, both boys and girls. So there's a lot of distance. And I remember there's a course we did called Man Enough. Man Enough by Simeon Mbevi. It's a very good course. But the issue of absent father, is a huge issue, even when the father is present. So boys are being brought up by their mothers, see. Boys don't know how to associate. There's very little, association. So that by the time the children grow up, there's this joke that they will invite the mother to go and visit them. The father will be left there with their cows, and all those kind of things, lonely and dying, in misery. If they have to go abroad, then, those kind of things. So men need to reinvent themselves. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing in Kikuyu land is a resurgence of the culture that used to exist before, but then which is at variance, in my humble submission, at times with what we may believe as Christians, because of some of those rituals that need to. But it's like men are trying to find their own niche in society. I don't know whether that can be a creature. The State Department for Social Security and Services has got a whole unit on family. And I don't know whether there needs to be a very strong programming of the boy child, really very concerted, because eventually these are the people we find in political rallies. They're the people who, because they only made 100 bob and they cannot provide for food for their families, they go drinking and you find them in the trenches, having fallen. They are the people who become violent. They are the people who really, if you look at them, and sorry to say this, without humility, you will see people looking like they are walking zombies. They have nothing. They are empty outside, inside. That is a national crisis, and they've gone into cheap liquor, that destroys them. There's something that needs to be done. There's something that needs to be done because the boy child doesn't know who to look up to anymore. The role modeling is very appalling, and I think men must now start participating in their lives, the lives of their boys. Debal, we have this misconception as men that as long as you provide for your family, you are good to go. And it is not true. I don't think families just need, huge tons of money there. That time spent with your child, it really makes a whole lot of a difference in terms of even making them feel that they belong. You get to know something about themselves. And because we are also supposed to be these disciplinarians, the problem is how to differentiate when you are a disciplinarian and when you are supposed to be a dad, to your child. So there's a lot that can be done, going forward to help men raise up their boys properly so that boys can be confident. They really look lost. I mean, I talked to quite a number of them. They don't know what to expect and what have you. So it's a government effort. It's a societal effort. We are no longer living in those, traditional homesteads. Even in the rural areas, it has really changed. And the way we expected that...
Because I am the custodian of the...
cumulative wisdom and ways of doing things around, boys, it has now dissipated in the modern economy. It cannot hold water. It cannot be relied upon. So we have to reinvent, and find, how can you, they say the metrosexual man, I don't know what that means, but how do you have a modern man who is able to actually play their role, who can provide, yes, but who can be present, who can be a father, who can be reliable, who can be seen to be providing leadership, and a lot of these things, there's a Kikuyu saying, kweherera, like you have a problem as a man, you duck, you leave it, you don't want to deal with it. And because men are kind of emasculated, and Honorable Shale, you will forgive me for this. You see now you cannot slap someone. You cannot exact physical, strength to show your manhood. Then to avoid conflict, then men keep off. So it's a conversation that we need to have, honestly, and also having groups of men who can actually talk to other men, and like the church ones actually play a role. They need to be strengthened. They will be societal. But the idea of just going there and have a carcass of a goat and assume everything is work, it needs to be a little bit more concerted. I was even wondering, Debal, whether there should even be a national curriculum on how to raise a boy child. I mean, what are the norms that we can, get from this culture and that seem to be forming that this is how a Kenyan boy is supposed to be raised? Do we relegate back to our traditional cultures? Again, there's a problem there of religion, I told you. So it's a conversation needs to start.
Thank you.
And the protest you see is when you have men saying they have men conference. That's when you can see now, people trying to say, this is how we are supposed to be with the late, what was his name? The guy from Eldoret.
Kibor.
Kibor. Kibor. Now he's Kibor. He was our, he was the patron. He was the patron.
Kibor was a patron, and of course everyone is having conversations around manhood as well. Even as we are talking about manhood, Gladys, I'll be remiss if I don't ask you regarding the 16 days of activism that is a gender-based violence. You also, as a women rep of Western Mishu County, this has become now a concern globally on how women, they're really suffering. Looking at some of the headlines that we have today, especially even the conjugal rape that we have in the New Times in Rwanda as well. Kindly, just tell us how maybe the gravity of it, just on a cursory outlook before delving deeper into it, because this is, it began, I think, last week until the 10th of December.
I think the whole point was to have sensitization about gender-based violence, because what has happened that even the authorities, the police, the gender desks that exist in our police stations and in our counties has not changed anything. In fact, gender-based violence has escalated. Many people go to the police station and seek refuge, but the police usually just tell them, oh, that's a domestic affair, just to go. Or ask the woman, ulifanya nini? What did you do? Then you got beaten. So it's still a very, we need to make people aware that it's a no, no, no. And it must have such severe consequences that it is not worth it for you to hit a woman, to attack a woman, and so on. If you look at just in the last 1 year, we lost 3 top athletes to gender-based violence and domestic violence. Tirop was one of them. Then I discovered there were another 2 within the same period. And people knew about it. Even the security officers around the community knew about it. They did nothing until they died. Just yesterday at Ziwa Hospital, a woman was brought in to the emergency, and she was incoherent. She had a swollen face. She couldn't walk. She was being carried in. And when I asked what happened, her sisters brought in, and they said that her husband had beaten her up, and so she had come nearer her home. But I remember asking the attending clinical officer, I said, have you, then they did the right thing, had her x-rayed, made sure she get a CT scan, because obviously she must have had some brain injury. And so when I asked, but the assailant, where is he? And I asked them, are you going to write a P3 form? Because the thing is, this has been happening apparently so many times when I listen to it, but it's considered by the community around that it's all right. So it's also educating people that is an acceptable behavior. If you look at what Justice Njoki Ndung'u did with the Njoki bill in Parliament, the sexual offences bill, she tried to make the consequences severe. You go in for 19 years. I think there was a proposal to have, and it did pass, to have a sexual offenders register. If it worked the way it worked works in the US, where even after you've served your jail time, when you come out into society, you're on a published list, and the community can decide they don't want you to live in their area. So what happens is, it's a big deterrent, because it means you might can never live in a community again. You may as well just remain in jail. So the consequences are not severe enough. In fact, in Kenya, people only get into trouble when the person has actually died. But if you've just injured someone, it's not considered. It's considered a problem. Just now, I have 3 cases of defilement. Defilement by a father of their little daughter. The mother had died. And the child now, has had to be taken to hospital. There was one case that I received on my phone and sent a team to go and get them to go to hospital. The boy was being who was sodomized by someone in the neighborhood. And it turned out, when we further investigated, he was not the only one. Apparently, it had happened to so many other boys in the neighborhood, but no one had spoken about it.
From the same gentleman.
But he had been taken to the police station. That man had been taken to the police station many times and then bailed out. Taken in and bailed out. There was also a case of a cook at a school, again in Wasingishu, who had defiled a child at the school. And he went to the police station. I even physically went to the police station myself. But shortly after that, he's released. So part of the culprits who is also the police officers. So if we want this to work, and I hope that the proposals that have been made in the Kenya Kwanza Women Charter and what is being done by the advisor on women affairs to the president, Harriet Chagai, is doing, is to ensure that we have places that people can go and report that is not the police station. Because actually, the police station is the worst possible place to be able to go.
Should that
Unless our police officers have body cameras so that we can supervise what their interaction with people, they actually allow this to happen. Because provided they are given some money, they let the person off. And in most cases, they are highly likely to favor the male what do you call the person who's the attacker? Yes.
I think it's a good suggestion. Don't you think maybe that should follow under the remit of the National Gender and Equality Commission? Yes, because I know the role is truly to make sure that there's parity as far as gender streaming is concerned, but also issues of gender-based violence, or is primarily, that is also under the ministry of Aisha Jumwa. Yes, should that is a good suggestion.
There is a big conversation on how to deal with it. It was mismanaged. I know that there is a gender officer in every county. The gender officer in my county, I've probably seen her twice in the entire 5 years. And her appointment or being in office has counted for nothing in Wasingishu County. I've dealt with more cases of gender-based violence as a member of parliament in my personal capacity, using my own resources more than she has on her salary. Yes. So again, we must be, and that's why I'm not afraid to say it, they serve no purpose. They must account for the time they've been there. How come these cases have not reduced while they've been in office? Which means that desk doesn't help. Close it down, let us rethink, and let's re-engineer what we are doing about this.
Nikal wants to comment.
Nostalgia. we lost out.
Will we discuss
in 2013
yes.
on gender issues? The structure of gender, we had, and he knows, if you ask Elis Wahome, she'll tell you, we had a gender department with gender officers, with the department all the way down to
the counties.
Not the counties, to the constituency level. What were then the districts? So you are the gender and social development officer. You know, gender...
Isn't it the same replica that Gladys is talking about?
But I know what is happening. There's a link. Those people are there, but the structure changed. So now they are like a feet without a head. But when
some are in the county, nobody knows they're in the ministry.
So gender lost out after 2013. Now, when the Gender and Equality Commission came, it is a commission. It does not have structures that go to the ground. When we had the gender department...
But does it have to have structures? You can work in complementarity with the county government as it is.
No.
If you have the gender officer...
I'm going to tell you, because when I joined the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Services, the first thing that I actually realized, you can't have a ministry at the headquarters and you have no officers on the ground. Yeah. Now, what does the ministry do? I'll give you another thing that suffered, Women Enterprise Fund. I found 1 billion in the bank and there were no officers on the ground. Yeah. I said, who is going to disburse this money? So the same way we had the gender and social development, and why it is useful to have gender and social development, a lot of issues around gender are social issues. Socialization of people, the role of people in families, that is what eventually culminates into attitudes. and you still will link it with the boy child. If you look at the men who actually beat or even kill their wives, they are normally men who feel unempowered. They only resort to one thing they know, which God gave them, that they are physically stronger. And that is now what they want to use. Instead of actually discussing the matter with the wife or with the girlfriend, and so that they say, this is what is logical. Then they say, I'm a man. You, like my son once said, that the only reason he can commit suicide is if a woman beats him. I said, come.
There's a problem.
There's a problem here. So now what you have now, the gender department, have you asked yourself, why would the gender department be in devolution? Why we split it from the ministry where the ministry dealing with children, the ministry dealing with social development, so that the link is an issue. And then the whole of gender, when you look at gender issues, it has been looked at as a gender war. There's an adversarial attitude towards it. So if you go to a women discussing gender issues, they are alone. What they are saying is so important. I saw it, I think 2017, when we went to the CSW, that's the Commission for Status of Women in New York. 4,000 women, and talking very pertinent things, and talking how men are not taking part.
Thank you.
But the men are not there to hear what they are saying. And I was saying, the people who should hear this are not you. You are a converted church. And actually, Kenya managed to move.
Good point. I'm going to go to CSW with you this time in March.
Yeah. Well, I used to go with us. We used to go there in large numbers. So now, you need to actually bring the men in as early as possible in issue of gender relationship.
Thank you.
Now, there's even another thing that is not taken into consideration. Childbearing and child rearing is such an important and labor-intensive thing, and the society has not, in my mind, compensated women enough for it. So, in my view, I think we used to even
I need to dedicate a show to
even the police. When we had this gender department, we were actually training the police, and we needed gender desks in police stations. That died. We had gender data every year to say, okay, what are we seeing in government structures? How is this going every year? We had safe houses. And because even the police need to be trained. They don't understand. They don't know.
Indeed.
They just think like their grandfathers treated.
The same reason you're saying.
You know,
you
are using a computer.
With the police.
You are using a computer.
Experience with the police.
You are using a computer, but you want to treat your wife or your daughter as your great-great-grandfather was being treated. Things have changed, and you need to be trained to be in line with that. So in the gender issue where we have lost, I think the structure of gender issues in the country need to be relooked at. Where should the gender department be? What is the relationship between the gender department and the Commission for Gender and Equality? And how does these structures transcate down to the villages? Because again, when devolution came, these officers were there. Even now, people are not very sure whether they are national government and they are county government. Am I wrong? So there are a lot of structural issues that need to be looked at.
Right, Isaac, you want to comment on that, or?
I think the gender now, maybe the resistance is all coming from the fact that people are feeling women are more empowered now, and I think there is agency in that. As long as gender is equal to women, that will be resisted. You know, there is from weed to God, from women in development to gender and development. Now, if it's about gender and development, let it be holistic. Let us not just discuss about the girl child. Let's also discuss about the changing roles of the boy child and how he's supposed to, stay in society. Now, in terms of the structure, now we have a Women's Rights Agency, which is a cabinet-level agency, because the Harriet Chigai is the advisor, my good friend. And now we have the Ministry for Gender and Public Service. And then we have the National Gender and Equality Commission. You see, that there needs to be some kind of realignment. Because the Women's Rights Agency is basically a statutory body. It must be established through maybe a legal notice. And for me, I see it playing that role of National Commission for Gender and Development, the one that was being headed by Pitalis Nyatuga. So are we going? Are we going ahead or backwards? Then also, I agree with Dr. Nikal. The gender department should have been under social protection, that kind of ministry, labor, social. There, public service and gender is a bit misaligned in affirmative action.
They should split it.
Now
the public
yes,
service.
No, it's gender and public service now. It's in the new structure.
Do we need it as a couple together?
You know,
yeah, the good thing
is
is
youth, gender, and public service.
But it's separated in the State Department.
Yes.
So there is the State Department for Gender, the State Department for Public Service, the State Department.
But if it was,
but look at that. If you are dealing with public service and the different,
you can just let him finish. I'll give you an opportunity. Yes,
so if they can be put together within labor, social protection, because I think for me there is more alignment there because of issues of social development. Because public service is more about HR issues. It's about how one may argue that you want to do an audit, Debal, about how many women are in government. That's okay, yes. That's a statistical issue. It's nominal. It could even be qualitative. But in terms of the programming, day-to-day programming, I think it would have been around so that then you align and then you have the districts. In fact, they used to be called DGSDOs, District Gender Social Development Officers, all of the way up to the sub-county now, dealing with such issues. And then also you have donor funds and what have you. But now, if you leave at the high level, the National Gender and Equality Commission, which I'm actually going to address after this, I have a meeting with them at KICD. They deal with more general policy issues, and then they kind of have lacked funding because they only have money to do their salaries. They don't have money to do real programming. And then the question is, because women fought very hard to have a constitutional commission so that it is more powerful, has it actually been able to do its proper role? Because constitutional commissions are actually like the fourth arm of government to do oversight, but not really to program. You get? The actual implementation, it needs to be in the State Department. So there is need. I think there's some that is not very neat there. We have about 3 actors of sorts: the Gender Department, the Women's Rights Agency now, and the Gender Commission. There's duplicity of roles. It needs to be properly aligned in terms of law. I must confess, Debal, on this show, I was part of the team that looked at Article 59 of the Constitution and separated KENREC, Kenya National Human Rights and Equality Commission, into having the Gender and Equality Commission to cater for we used to have an equality bill that never came to light. But we used that opportunity to now have gender and equality and have a separate commission. Myself, Naomi Shaban, Joki Ndungu, and Dr. Regina Mwatha, and others. You know yourself, those days. The idea was just to basically create another avenue for those marginalized groups, the special interest groups, to have their own kind of commission. But then we need to ask ourselves, has it been properly facilitated to do what it's supposed to do? I think there is agency. Number one, as I summarize, is that gender must also be expanded to also mean the boy child. Number two, in terms of where they are located, there is still a conflict of roles that need to be properly delineated. But also, most importantly, I think people must now also start looking at the issue of, is it actually true? For example, when it comes to violence, are there men who are suffering in silence? Are they being, suffocated by their wives? Is it just physical violence that counts? Is there emotional abuse that also women exercise against men? This is a conversation that we must have.
All right. I wanted just to wind up.
I just wanted to just say one thing. When they split that into 3, the commission, it was a human rights, and then the constitution provided that you could actually split it. And from the same one, you got the ombudsman, and the same one, you got the gender commission, and the human rights. Now, what didn't happen, and he'll agree, because I was in the ministry then, when that split was done and we had the gender and the equality commission, we didn't link it at that time with the Department of Gender and Social Development and so on, as he's saying. Now, when then devolution came, it was further lost. So the whole thing is hanging. So the Gender and Equality Commission is a commission which is sitting at the center and has no roots on the ground. The Department of Gender is also now with public service, but again, it has also no link with the people on the ground, because the devolution, you find officers dealing. So, and all this needs to be put together. And there was, even as he was saying, is gender it is men and women and socialization. And then when you go into agriculture, what are the issues of gender? When you go into education, what are the issues of gender? When you go into the Ministry of Water, what is the issue of gender? So what was another thing has been lost, which you can remember, was gender mainstreaming. As an indicator. Yeah, so that in every department and every institution, there are people dealing with issues of gender mainstreaming.
Thank you. I think comprehensive, and
they have dealt with it very well.
They've dealt with it very well. The president is also particularly intent to make sure that the issue is well dealt with the Women's Charter. I think that will be a good initiative. If there's lack of funding from the government to the commission, that they're actually escaping, through the barrel right now in terms of resourcing, that is something that can be looked upon as well. But even again, people have been castigating the same government that has been giving promissory notes in terms of cabinet constitution. Women have not been, given so much chances as far as the promise was given out there. We have a court ruling regarding also the PSS. Gender balance, Gladys Bostrele, that has been flagged as one of the key pivotal issues, or I'm mixing that? No,
I think what people are forgetting is that when you're looking at whether we have met the constitutional requirement for not more than 2/3 of any one gender, when you look at the Supreme Court, you then assess this, you audit the Supreme Court as a body, because it's collegial. Yeah? And then when you look at cabinet, similarly. But when you're looking at PSS is not collegial, or is not a group. It's not like cabinet. So in fact, if you look at what the Gender Commission does when it's undertaking its audit, it looks at each ministry individually, if you want to see if it has met the 2/3 gender requirement. It's ministry by ministry. So you cannot look at the PSS as a collegial body. That doesn't apply. Parliament is collegial. The cabinet is also collegial. The Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, and the High Court. Those can be looked at as a body. And then what we should be asking ourselves is, let's undertake an audit. Once these PSS are populated, let's check the entire ministry. Then from then, we can undertake what Dr. Nyikal is referring to as gender mainstreaming, that you begin to prepare a framework on how you will ensure that you will have met the requirement within a specified period. Yes.
Thank you.
So there is a bit of confusion there.
There's a bit of confusion.
But there's something that
but
needs to be
legally
differentiated.
What?
There's something that needs to be differentiated between a gender rule and a gender principle. Now, gender rule is mandatory. That it has to be done. But the gender principle is aspirational. So what we need to ask ourselves, does the Constitution does it provide for a gender rule or a gender principle? Because there has been misunderstanding. The Constitution, in my humble submission, is about principles. So there is no rule that says not more than 2/3. That's a principle. You get the point? So, and then that is progressively realized. For example, in elective positions, you cannot force people to elect women, people with disabilities, just because they are. You have to put in place administrative measures cumulatively, progressively going forward.
Thank you.
So that eventually you get to it. So that debate is very contentious.
Right.
Is the principle not the rule?
All right. Thank you very much. And I know we have dedicated much time with the gender issue as well, and the boy child, and looking also at matters of CBC, very pivotal where the country is right now, but also more of a very important catnip issue that is on the table for everyone to discuss right now is the new development on the issue of GMO, with the court ruling right now that has stopped or has actually stopped the banning of GMO, saying that matter should be determined, the safety of it, because there is an ongoing debate. And it seems also the government is woefully disjointed on these matters of maize importation into the country. Mithika Linturi, who's a CS Agriculture, has no sorting idea about these imports. And he says that he should be within his remit, not the CS of Trade. So where does he get the temerity to come out and say that also farmers should also, who are holding this maize, should release them within 72 hours? Where does he have the cheek and the authority to do that if he's not his ministry as it is right now? But we want to just hear what the president has to say in this regard, and the court ruling as well. Here is what the development is so far on GMOs.
Because I am the custodian of the statistics on how much food we require in this country, how much food we consume every day. I think you have to own your horses, because I like speaking from a point of knowledge, and information that I give out there must be backed by data or statistics, figures. Cabinet has pronounced itself on the position of GMO. So it's not something we can discuss. So if there will be need to bring GMO maize, we won't do it.
We ask Kenyans to oppose this move and to totally reject any GMO foods should they ever enter the Kenyan market. The president used an outgoing cabinet, which was basically an interim. It really had no powers to pass decisions of this magnitude, to say that they're removing the ban. That is itself as unprocedural and is illegal. To pass decisions of this magnitude.
Right, that is a bite there from, of course, the CS and Raila Odinga of the Azimio coalition. Let me just begin with you, Gladys, on this particular matter, because it has been, showing the soft underbelly on the government, where we have one CS pronouncing this, we have another CS coming to countermand it, woefully disjointed. He has no sorting idea about the imports. So was there any cabinet approval to some of these issues that have been raised? Because then how do you go full steam ahead and make a declaration that farmers should actually, bring out their maize that they're holding within 72 hours?
I think first of all, this debate relating to GMO has degenerated and become very, very confusing to Kenyans. And I think we must make sure that even on this show we don't continue with the
perpetuation of that
perpetuating that, and also making people fear-mongering, telling people that there's a risk to your health. So you're confusing the growing of GMO having GMO seeds in the country, having GMO crops, or having GMO foods available in our market. There's a very big difference. But in order to just help, I was just looking at the historical context of this, and let's look at how this came up, because even when you see the statement that is being made there, if you remember, it was I was just checking my dates, I just remember in 2011, in Parliament, because it's on the Hansard, and actually I was checking through the Hansard.
The Right Honourable Raila Odinga.
The Right Honourable Odinga was supporting GMOs at that time. And then as a result of the discussions in Parliament, the biosafety policy was tabled in Parliament. Thereafter, the government created, as a result of those discussions in Parliament, created a National Biosafety Authority, which was put in place to look into the safety of GMO or the viability of GMO, both seeds, food, and crops. And then at some point in 2012, there was Seralini, who was a French scientist, who published an article that basically said that GMO crops were harmful to our health. Based on that study, Kenya banned the importation or use of GMO crops until more sufficient information was available. And that took quite a bit of time. What happened is, subsequently, the Seralini's, the French scientist, publication and research was discredited was found to have been misleading, and in fact, the peer-reviewed medical journal retracted that publication. So it was found to have no basis at all. On that basis, Kenya continued their own investigations, and I know that KALRO has continued to undertake research on GMO. In fact, they've actually developed some GMO variety crops. I think the BT cotton, I think there was the maize, right? Am I right? There was cassava. Dr. Nyikal must know this because it was during his time, and it was the time when he was the Ministry of Health. So that was done. So we've actually had GMO testing and growing in various countries. In fact, the cassava, which was called, let me check, it was called Event 4046, was actually harvested and tested and harvested. Field trials were done in Mutwapa, in Kilifi, in Kandara, Murang'a County, and Alupe in Busia County. And they have actually been harvested in various counties. So we are being, I think there's fear mongering that's being made. And let us explain to Kenyans, what is GMO? It's genetically modified organisms. What they do is we could have two types of maize. Yeah, or I mean, we have maize and we have another type of plant. One plant is drought resistant. So it has an organism or a gene that makes it drought resistant. Then our maize seed doesn't have that. So what you do is you remove that organism that makes it drought resistant and put it into this other seed. So you have modified it to give it an extra gene that makes it drought resistant. So it is not a synthetic food being produced. It is using the normal seeds that we have, but taking one gene from another and transferring to the other so you can give it the characteristics or the properties that we desire. Some of them, you want them to be resistant to herbicides. So you get a crop that has the seed or the gene of a certain crop that is resistant to herbicides, and you take that gene and in the lab merge it with this other one in order to give it that resistance. So people just need to understand it from that simple perspective. If you listened, I think the president in Homa Bay said that they're going to introduce the BT cotton that is GMO. That has been, those are trials that are being done in Kenya. So are we talking about the imported ones or the ones that we're already producing in Kenya? In any case, there is no law in Kenya that that banned GMO or allowed GMO, because on issues of food safety, there is many various institutions that from time to time on a case-by-case basis look at the safety of food. We have KEFIS, we have also the Bureau of Standards, we have the Biosafety Authority. They work in conjunction with AFA, in conjunction with KALRO, in conjunction even with Pest Products Control Board. So there is many institutions that are working on that. So we've become so focused as if it was just that cabinet approval, lifting. So because cabinet had actually banned it until further information, now the science has come and the research that has been done over the 10 years has now come back to cabinet, and cabinet was asked, cabinet now reviewed and saw that the decision to ban was was only until further information is found. And now maybe I am not privy to what was decided, what was said in cabinet, but it must be that
it's good that you're not privy that what was said in cabinet. We are due for a short break right now, but the question that maybe I want to pose to you first of all was that the president sat with his cabinet, which was in transition. They normally say that the government operates in perpetuity, but when you look at the constitution, when does the function of the president cease? Right in when the new president comes. And if the function of President Uhuru Kenyatta ceases when we have the swearing in of President William Ruto, so does also his appointments of the cabinet. So the legality of the issue that is being raised on the cabinet approval on this also, that is questionable. Did the president sit with the cabinet secretaries that were not constitutionally mandated I stand to be corrected and advised from you as well. But this is a question that we need to, and what was the tearing rush?
The one Raila Odinga has made, saying that that cabinet was not legally constituted, he should cite the law. Because there must be a law that says you can't just make up the law as you go along. Cite the section of the law and the constitution that says up to this period, the outgoing cabinet is not functional. Because that is not true. Government never ceases to work. That is why the country is still running today.
Indeed, government never ceases to work, but there are limitations.
And that's why they remain in office until the new cabinet secretaries take over.
All right.
The permanent principal secretaries remain in office.
I need to take a short break. But the question will be on the other side of the break is, if also President Uhuru Kenyatta's government in transition, he's limited even to appointments of cabinet secretary or approval for some of the policies to make as well, does not the same case apply also to the transitioning government? That will be another question. Speculative, we'll actually answer it on the other side of the break.